Admiral HFY's third antenna twitched in distress as she reviewed the latest combat readiness scores. The holoscreen before her painted a picture so dismal, she briefly wondered if her species' natural color-shifting abilities had somehow affected the display. By the 7 moons of Xylax, she muttered, mandibles clicking rapidly. These numbers can't be right, but they were, and she knew it. The Galactic Defense Academy, pride of the United Species Alliance, was producing warriors who couldn't fight their way out of a malfunctioning food synthesizer. The latest batch of graduates had managed to lose a training exercise against maintenance droids. Not combat droids, maintenance droids. The kind that apologized to dust particles before cleaning them up. Her office, perched atop the Academy's highest spire, offered a panoramic view of what should have been the galaxy's finest military training facility. The pristine white buildings, arranged in perfect geometric patterns, gleamed under the triple suns of Centauri Prime. Everything looked perfect on the surface. That was the problem. "Computer, call an emergency meeting of the Academic Council," she ordered, her scales shifting from their usual diplomatic azure to a troubled mauve. "Priority level critical. And yes, that means wake up Professor NX. I don't care if he's in hibernation season." 3 hours later, the council chamber hummed with agitated conversation. 12 of the galaxy's most decorated military minds sat around a floating table, representing species from across known space. Professor NX's snoring only added to the chaos. The statistics are undeniable. HFY projected her findings onto the chamber's central display. "Our graduates' combat effectiveness has dropped 47% in the last cycle. The Zorblaxian Military Academy, our greatest rival, now outperforms us in every metric except uniform pressing. And let's be honest, they're naturally wrinkled." Dean Quick's P7, an energy being who insisted on wearing a physical suit to meetings for the aesthetic, pulsed with concern. "But we're following all the traditional training protocols. Our meditation sessions are twice as long as regulations require." Yes, HFY's scales flickered with barely suppressed sarcasm, because clearly what our warriors need is more time contemplating the peaceful nature of plasma rifles. She took a deep breath, knowing her next proposal would either end her career or save the Academy. "I suggest we hire human instructors." The chamber erupted. Professor NX woke up with a snort, accidentally releasing his species' defensive ink cloud. Through the black haze, HFY could hear the expected objections. "Those Deathworlders. They'll kill our students. Have you seen what they consider a light workout? They drink poison for enjoyment." Exactly, HFY's voice cut through the chaos. "They come from a planet that tried to kill them daily, and instead of dying, they turned it into a game. They call weather that would strip our scales off beach season. Their idea of relaxation involves deliberately falling down mountains." She pulled up another display, this one showing combat footage from the human military. "While we're teaching students to find their inner peace, humans are teaching theirs to find their opponent's weak spots. While we perfect our uniform press, they perfect their survival skills." The room had gone quiet. Even Professor NX was fully awake now, all 8 eyes fixed on the display. "We have 2 choices," HFY continued, her scales settling into a determined gold. "We can maintain our traditions and continue producing warriors who treat combat like a philosophical debate, or we can adapt. The galaxy isn't getting any safer, and our enemies aren't getting any gentler." Dean Quick's P7 suit shifted uncomfortably. "And you have a specific human in mind." HFY's mandibles curved into what humans would recognize as a smile. "Oh yes, their military has agreed to send us their best trainer. They call her a master sergeant apparently. It's someone who specializes in turning civilians into warriors." "And when does this human arrive?" someone asked nervously. As if on cue, the chamber's windows rattled with the sound of an atmospheric entry. The assembled council members watched as a small ship, falling far faster than safety protocols allowed, screamed toward the Academy's landing pad. "Now," HFY answered, her scales flickering with anticipation. "Now the real training begins." The landing pad was still smoking when Master Sergeant Kai Rodriguez stepped out of her ship, combat boots hitting the pristine surface with deliberately heavy steps. She took one look at the welcoming committee, a collection of various alien species doing their best not to flinch, and grinned. She'd seen more intimidating groups at Earth kindergartens. So she drawled, adjusting her regulation cap. This is what passes for a military academy out here? Looks more like a spa resort had a baby with a meditation retreat. Admiral HFY's scales shifted through several uncertain colors before settling on a diplomatic blue. Master Sergeant, welcome to. Save it, Kai cut her off, already striding toward the assembled cadets. Let's see what I'm working with. The cadets, representing 17 different species, stood in what they probably thought was attention. One of them, a crystalline being, was literally vibrating with anxiety. Another, some sort of gaseous entity, had condensed into what might have been an attempt at a humanoid shape. Sweet mother of mercy, Kai muttered under her breath. Right. Listen up, you walking science fair projects. The translator crystals around their necks worked overtime to convey her uniquely colorful vocabulary. Several of the more sensitive cadets developed spontaneous stress molting. I've seen your combat scores, she continued, pacing the line. My grandmother's knitting circle could outfight the lot of you, and half of them are holograms. But that's not your fault. She stopped in front of the Academy's chief combat instructor, a 12-foot-tall mantis-like being. It's theirs. The alien instructors bristled literally, in some cases. One of them, apparently composed entirely of floating tentacles, tied itself in an indignant knot. Your current training regime includes, Kai consulted her datapad with exaggerated care, 3 hours of meditation on the nature of conflict, 2 hours of uniform maintenance, and 1 hour of, wait, this can't be right, harmonious movement in theoretical combat situations. She looked up at Admiral HFY. You're not training warriors, you're training interpretive dancers with good laundry skills. Our methods are time-honored, one of the instructors began. So's extinction, Kai shot back. Tomorrow morning, 0500 hours, we start actual training. Wear whatever you want, it's all going to be ruined anyway. But the schedule, Professor NX Thal sputtered, ink in distress. The schedule is dead. Long live the new schedule. Kai's grin widened as she surveyed her soon-to-be victim students. Oh, and one more thing. Anyone who shows up late gets to demonstrate their harmonious movement while carrying a full rucksack. Up a mountain that I'll build tonight if I have to. As she strode away, leaving a wake of stunned silence, Admiral HFY's scales settled into an intrigued purple. Either this human would revolutionize their training program, or they'd all be dead by next week. Probably both. The first training session began at exactly 0500 hours, with Kai's cheerful voice echoing through the barracks. Rise and shine, you evolutionary experiments. Time to learn how real soldiers train. The medical bay's emergency alert started wailing approximately 7 minutes later. What do you mean excessive cardiovascular stress? Kai demanded, staring at the holographic readouts floating above her gasping students. They just ran 2 kilometers. Chief Medical Officer PH Lox's tentacles writhed in distress. Their metabolic readings are off the charts. The crystalline beings are showing microfractures. The gaseous cadets have partially evaporated. Good, Kai beamed. That means it's working. The morning only got more interesting when they reached the obstacle course. Kai had spent the night constructing what she called a beginner-friendly version of standard Earth military training grounds. The alien instructors stared in horror at the towering monstrosity of walls, ropes, mud pits, and what appeared to be a fire-breathing section. This is impossible, protested a cadet whose body resembled a sentient cloud of sparkles. The gravitational forces alone would tear us apart. Nonsense, Kai said, casually doing one-armed push-ups while giving instructions. I've adjusted everything for your various physiologies. The anti-grav generators will help with weight distribution, and the force fields will keep the gaseous ones from dispersing too much. Now, who wants to go first? Nobody moved. Several cadets tried to blend into the background literally, in the case of the chameleonic species. Wonderful. Volunteers by silence. You, Sparkles, you're up. What followed was perhaps the most chaotic display of attempted physical activity the galaxy had ever witnessed. The crystalline cadet got stuck halfway up the wall, growing stress crystals in interesting patterns. The gaseous beings kept trying to float over obstacles until Kai installed energy barriers. One particularly unfortunate trainee with multiple limbs managed to tie themselves into a knot that took 3 physics professors to unravel. "Is this really how humans train?" Admiral Zyx VA asked, watching a gelatinous cadet wobble through the mud pit. "Oh no," Kai laughed, helping a partially evaporated student reconstitute themselves. "This is the kindergarten version. On Earth, we'd do this carrying full gear, under simulated fire, while reciting our unit's history." The medical staff, already overwhelmed, began updating their resumes. The day's crowning moment came during the endurance demonstration. Kai, trying to show proper technique, completed the course in what she considered a leisurely 5 minutes. The assembled aliens watched in horrified fascination as she sprinted, climbed, and powered through obstacles that their physics department had declared theoretically impossible to survive. "That's why we need human instructors," Admiral Zyx VA explained to the stunned academic council later that day. "They don't just ignore possible death, they turn it into a competition." But the medical reports Professor Nxthal began. "Show improvement," Kai interrupted, bursting into the meeting covered in mud and wearing a disturbingly cheerful expression. "Your gaseous cadets are learning to maintain form under pressure, literally. The crystalline ones are developing stress adaptations. Even the energy beings are figuring out how to maintain coherence during physical exertion." She pulled up her own set of data readings. In one day, they've shown more actual combat-ready adaptations than in the previous 3 months of harmonious movement studies. "And the 17 emergency medical interventions Dean Kix P7 asked dryly. "Character building," Kai declared. "Besides, only 3 of those were actual emergencies. The rest were just dramatic overreactions to discovering muscles they didn't know they had." As if to prove her point, a distant wail echoed from the direction of the barracks, followed by what sounded suspiciously like someone discovering their species could, in fact, experience muscle cramps. "Tomorrow," Kai announced, "we start the real training. Today was just a warm-up." The medical staff, listening through the door, immediately began drafting their collective resignation letter. 1 month into Kai's training program, the Galactic Defense Council called an emergency session. The footage playing on their screens showed cadets performing feats that defied their species' known limitations. A crystalline being phase shifted through an obstacle course while maintaining structural integrity. A gaseous cadet compressed themselves to slip through laser grids without dispersing. Even the energy beings had learned to maintain coherent form while executing complex combat maneuvers. "This is unnatural," thundered High Commissioner Vex Thor, his bioluminescent patches flashing warning colors. "These training methods violate 17 different safety protocols." 23. Actually, Kai corrected, lounging in her chair with her boots propped on the ancient council table. But who's counting? Admiral Zyx VA's scales flickered between diplomatic blue and smug violet as she presented the latest performance metrics. Combat readiness up 312%. Survival rates in simulated encounters increased by 289%. Physical adaptation capabilities exceeded all previous records. But at what cost? Demanded another counselor, their crystalline form vibrating with concern. "We've received reports of students voluntarily requesting additional training sessions." "The horror," Kai muttered, rolling her eyes. The situation grew more complicated when rival academies started demanding investigations. Their own students were requesting Earth-style training, leading to a wave of panic among traditional instructors across the galaxy. "They're doing what," Kai asked one morning, watching security footage of cadets from the Zorblaxian Military Academy attempting to recreate her obstacle course with decidedly mixed results. "It's spreading," Admiral Zyx VA reported, trying to hide her amusement. "They're calling it the human heresy in traditional circles. Apparently, your methods are corrupting the pure warrior traditions of the galaxy." "You mean the traditions that got your cadets beaten by janitor bots?" Before the Admiral could respond, a group of cadets marched past the window, singing a training cadence they'd learned from Kai, while carrying loads that would have been considered lethal just weeks ago. Leading them was the once timid gaseous cadet, now maintaining perfect cohesion despite the gravitational challenges. "The council wants to shut us down," HFY admitted. "They say we're creating." What was the term? "Unnecessarily competent warriors," Kai quoted, grinning. "Yeah, I got their strongly worded message, right after I finished teaching the crystalline cadets how to use their refraction properties for stealth operations." "And your response?" Kai's grin widened as she pulled up a training schedule. "Tomorrow, we demonstrate why humans believe the best defense is a good offense. I've invited the entire council to observe. They'll have medical teams standing by." "Good. They can witness firsthand how their fragile cadets handle a full Earth standard combat simulation. I've even added some special features for our energy being students. Did you know they can actually channel plasma when properly motivated?" The next day's demonstration went exactly as Kai planned, which meant complete chaos by traditional standards and unprecedented success by human ones. The council watched in stunned silence as cadets of every species demonstrated abilities that rewrote their understanding of evolutionary limitations. Afterward, as the medical team stood idle with nothing to treat except their own shocked expressions, High Commissioner Vex Thor approached Kai with his bioluminescence dimmed in submission. "We may have been hasty in our judgment," he admitted. "The council has received 47 requests from other academies for similar training programs." "Only 47, Kai checked her datapad. Wait for it." As if on cue, another 100 requests flooded in, along with footage of cadets across the galaxy attempting to replicate her methods. Some were even succeeding. "Well," she said, watching a particularly enthusiastic group of energy beings attempting their first human-style obstacle course. "Looks like the galaxy's finally ready for some real training." The challenge arrived via quantum transmission. Its formal language barely masking the Zorblaxian Military Academy's wounded pride. "We hereby challenge the Galactic Defense Academy to prove the superiority of their unorthodox methods in traditional combat trials." Kai read the message aloud to her cadets, who'd gathered in what used to be the meditation hall, now converted into what she called the Sweat Lodge of Victory. "They want to do this the old-fashioned way," she announced, pacing before her assembled troops. "Tournament style, one-on-one combat, team exercises, and survival challenges. In other words, they want to embarrass us in front of the entire galaxy." The crystalline cadet, now sporting battle-hardened facets, raised a geometrically perfect hand. "When do we start?" "That's the spirit." Kai checked the tournament requirements. "We have 2 weeks. They think they're being generous, giving us time to reconsider our methods. 2 weeks to prove that crazy humans know what they're doing." What followed was a training montage that would have made Earth's finest drill sergeants weep with joy. Day 1. "No, you cannot phase through the gravity well. Learn to use it. Yes, I know you're basically gaspy denser gas. Work with me here." Day 3. A3. "Listen up, Sparkles. Your energy signature is bright enough to guide ships through hyperspace. We're going to turn that from a weakness into a weapon. Ever heard of flash bangs?" A5. "Stop apologizing to the training drones. They don't have feelings. And if they did, they'd respect you more for beating them." Day 7. S. "Yes, I know your species evolved from photosynthetic algae. That's why we're practicing night operations. Adapt. Overcome. Stop glowing unless it's tactical." Day 10. "Beautiful work on the plasma channeling. Less beautiful work on not setting your teammates on fire. Remember, friendly fire isn't." The transformation was remarkable. Energy beings learned to modulate their signatures for stealth. Crystalline cadets developed combat-specific refraction patterns. Even the gaseous beings mastered the art of tactical density alteration. Admiral HFY watched it all with scales shifting between pride and disbelief. "They're not just learning combat," she observed. "They're redefining what their species can do." "Humans call it rising to the occasion," Kai replied, watching a squad of mixed-species cadets run their 15th obstacle course of the day, though usually with more colorful language. The night before the tournament, Kai gathered her troops for one final briefing. Tomorrow, they expect to see the same old academy they've always known. They expect to see soldiers who follow the ancient traditions of looking pretty and losing gracefully. She paused for effect. Let's ruin their whole damn day. A cheer went up in multiple frequencies, some of them technically classified as weapons fire. They think we've corrupted their precious traditions, Kai continued, her grin turning predatory. Tomorrow, we show them why Earth's deadliest predator became its dominant species. Tomorrow, we show them why humans don't just survive on a death world, we turn it into a training ground. The crystalline cadets' battle facets gleamed. For the academy. No, Kai corrected. For the look on their faces when you phase shift through their impenetrable defense shields. For the moment they realize that gas can, in fact, kick solid matter's ass. For the pure joy of proving that meditation is great, but nothing beats good old-fashioned human crazy. As her troops dispersed for their last night of rest, Admiral Zyke's VAA approached. The other academies are already claiming we've enhanced our cadets with illegal modifications. The only modifications here are attitude and insanity, Kai assured her. By this time tomorrow, they'll be begging for human instructors. And if they don't? Kai's grin widened. Then we'll just have to keep winning until they do. After all, what's more human than being so good at something that you force everyone else to change their standards? The Admiral's scales shifted to a color Kai had never seen before. Is that pride or worry? Both, Zyke's VAA admitted. Definitely both. The tournament arena gleamed under three suns as representatives from every major military academy in the galaxy gathered. The betting pools heavily favored traditional methods, with odds of 5-0-1 against Kai's reformed cadets. Those odds lasted exactly 2 minutes into the first match. The Zorblaxian champion, wearing ceremonial battle armor passed down through 17 generations, faced off against the gaseous cadet. The traditional warrior brandished his ancestral energy blade with perfect form. The gaseous cadet turned themselves into a precision-guided storm. That's not technically against the rules, Kai pointed out to the sputtering judges as her student literally flowed through their opponent's defenses and short-circuited the ancient armor systems. Show me where it says a fighter can't become a sentient weather pattern. Before the judges could respond, emergency alarms blared through the arena. A nearby quantum research facility had suffered a catastrophic containment breach. Reality warping energies threatened to tear apart the sector's space-time fabric. Tournament postponed due to imminent existential crisis, announced the head judge, already moving toward the evacuation zones. Belay, that Kai commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. Quantum team, front and center. Her energy being cadets snapped to attention, their forms already shifting to match the crisis frequencies. The crystalline squad moved into formation, their battle facets reconfiguring for dimensional stabilization. This is what we trained for, Kai reminded them. Remember exercise scenario 47. The one where you had us contain a simulated star going nova, the gaseous cadet asked, while reciting the human concept of Murphy's Law. Exactly. Same principle, different physics. Move out. What followed would be studied in military academies for generations once they rewrote their textbooks to account for what should have been impossible. The energy beings dove into the quantum breach, using their newly mastered plasma channeling to stabilize the worst rifts. Crystalline cadets created prismatic barriers, refracting reality itself back into proper alignment. The gaseous squad formed living containment fields, their carefully controlled density gradients shepherding escaped particles back into normal space-time. From the command center, Kai directed the operation with the same casual intensity she brought to morning calisthenics. Watch those quantum harmonics. Yes, you can phase shift through dimensional barriers, you've done it in practice. No, don't apologize to the laws of physics, just bend them. Admiral Zyke watched in amazement as the crisis indicators shifted from apocalyptic to manageable to contained. They're not just fighting it, she realized. They're adapting to it in real time. That's what happens when you train soldiers to think instead of just follow traditions, Kai said proudly. Though the daily doses of controlled chaos probably helped too. When the quantum breach finally sealed, the Academy representatives who had come to judge the tournament found themselves speechless. These weren't just cadets who had learned new tricks, they were warriors who had fundamentally redefined what their species could achieve. I believe Admiral HFY addressed the assembled officials. This counts as a practical demonstration of our new training methods. The tournament one judge began weakly. Just got replaced by a real-world crisis, Kai finished. And my improperly trained cadets just prevented a collapse of reality, while your traditional champions were running for the evacuation ships. She turned to her troops, who stood at attention despite having just wrestled with the fabric of space-time. Fall in. Emergency response drills obviously need work. Tomorrow morning, 0500 hours, we start quantum breach containment training. The gaseous squad's density control was sloppy. The crystalline team's refraction patterns were off by 0.03 degrees. And someone needs to explain to the energy beings that you can't high-five in plasma form. Rather than groan, the cadets straightened with pride. They'd proven themselves not just in staged combat, but in a real crisis. More importantly, they'd proven that human training methods, while insane, produced results that traditional approaches couldn't match. One question, Admiral HFY's scales shifted to curious purple. What would you have done if the quantum breach hadn't interrupted the tournament? Kai's grin turned positively predatory. Oh, that wouldn't have been nearly as fun. This way they can't argue with the results. After all, nothing says training success quite like saving reality before lunch. As if to punctuate her point, one of the energy-being cadets accidentally released a burst of quantum-charged plasma, and their crystalline squad mate automatically refracted it into a perfect Academy logo in the sky. See, Kai beamed. They're even showing initiative in their mistakes now. That's progress.